My name is Joshua, and I am the Tribune. Is there one person, just one person, who can't wait to get to a hospital? They just love being a patient at the hospital, and they are so looking forward to the ambulance coming to pick them up and take them to emergency so they can get operated on and everything else, looked at by nurses, examined by physicians, and you just can't wait. Is there one person? Don't worry, I'll wait. Not one? Okay, what about doctor's appointments? You just can't wait to get to your next doctor's appointment, and you love going to the family doctor and having this person examine you and finding out what's wrong, what's not wrong. This is just the best time of your life, and you're just counting off the days until you can get to your next doctor's appointment. I didn't think there's one person. It would be crazy if there was. So you can imagine my astonishment and my anger when I keep hearing all these pastors of our time referring to the church as just a giant hospital. Nobody wants to just keep going to a hospital over and over again. The point of a hospital is if you need to go to the hospital, you get fixed and you get examined and you get a solution so that you can actually go do greater things in your life. Nobody just wants to stay in a hospital all the time. So why do these pastors keep calling the church a giant hospital? Because God does not look at it as a hospital. God looks at it as a palace with a hospital inside of it. So that any of his children that need to go to the hospital or need to be examined and go to the doctor, they can do that, but they need to get out of the hospital so they can actually be effective in their purpose with him. This is really what the church is. So for all these pastors saying that the church is a giant hospital and having their congregation shout and scream over that and everybody's clapping because they're parrots, these people just want to make you comfortable with always being sick, always being troubled, always having problems, and always having the worst time ever so that they can just keep preaching to you such messages that are way down here that just keep you comfortable with everybody else and you're always a victim, but never a real conqueror, when God really wants us to be more than conquerors. So I have to dispel this satanic lie that the church is just a big hospital. This conditions our mind to be okay with being in a group of people clapping because we're all just sitting in a hospital every Sunday. And it actually puts a glass ceiling over our heads and we cannot think higher because we're just so focused on it's okay that I'm having these problems. It's okay that I'm going through this because after all, I need to go to the hospital and get operated on and next week I'll be right back in the hospital. So if we understand that God's house is a palace with a hospital in it, if necessary, if you need it, then we will understand why God sends us to the hospital in those hospital moments in the Spirit. It's really to mend us and fix us so we can get out as soon as possible. He does not want us sitting all the time and just being on the surgeon's table and we're just actually debilitated. We're just laying there getting all these surgeries at all times. This is not what he wants. If you're getting a lot of surgeries and you having to go to the hospital all the time and you have to go to doctor's appointments, that means you are not a healthy person. You need to get healthy. The goal is not to get into the doors of the hospital. It's to be a healthy Christian. It's to work with God on a level where you can actually operate in his power. And if something happens, then you know the hospital is available to you. And if you need to get worked on, then God will do that for you. But this is not the goal. So now that we understand what this goal is for God, he has a palace with a hospital inside of it. Now I can actually explain one of the reasons why God will send you to the hospital. His hospital in the Spirit. One of the reasons that we need to discuss today is we are addicted to physical adulation and natural pleasures and natural advancements, and we ignore our spiritual advancements. So what God does is he will put you in a hospital season where you are working with God but you have nothing to show for it outside in the natural. Nothing. Everything looks opposite of the real power you're working in with God. Now, the problem with this for us is that we could be operating in so much power with God, maybe more than the people who are actually in the natural looking like they're so successful. But we don't realize it because we are looking at in our natural situations. We are using our natural eyes and not our spirit to actually assess what God is doing in our lives. So this hospital season that he puts us in is he makes sure our natural situation is opposite of the power that we're actually operating in reality. So this message really is for people who need to realize the power that they're actually operating in that looks invisible in the natural, but God is actually advancing you so much in the spirit that you couldn't believe the power you're physically actually operating in right now. You need to realize that God is like this because the solution, the way to get out of this hospital season for this problem is to really marinate in and notice before the natural situation changes. You need to notice the kind of power that God is actually operating through you with. You need to practice knowing and realizing every moment you're operating in supernatural power. Now, again, I'm not talking about power that you see every day. I'm talking about power that nobody's seen before. Power that is so crazy and so supernatural, you don't even realize why you're not one of the major hitters and the major leaders on the world stage. This is that kind of power I'm talking about. This is this discouragement that will come against you with this kind of power operating like that, with that kind of magnificent strength, God's power in a situation that does not line up with you operating that kind of power. So what the enemy does is if you can't recognize this, and you're actually only looking at natural situations, he will come and try to convince you that you're not powerful. He will try to come and convince you that you are not working with God. But I'm here to tell you, you need to start really paying attention to the miracles that God is actually doing in your life while you are not seeing the exterior, the natural situation change in your life. Now, you might look at this message and think, he's talking about somebody living in poverty and they're working in God's power. No, I'm not talking about that at all. That's foolishness. I'm talking about somebody you think is super successful on the outside, but they're working in God's power. And their power that God's actually working in them right now is actually way more than even their wealthy circumstances even. I'm not just talking to people in poverty. I'm talking to people who look like they have great lives. They look like I have a great life, and still they're discouraged because when God comes and operates in that kind of power with you, we don't even see somebody operating this kind of power. Not even the wealthiest person, the most famous person you can even think of is not operating the power I'm talking about. So for all the people who just think I'm speaking to no-name impoverished people, are very mistaken, because I'm really also speaking to people who look like, even right now, they're super powerful, but they're trying to find God and they don't realize, wow, I'm actually operating crazy power, but I'm discouraged because the power I'm operating in, I don't even see it. I'm a celebrity. Oh, to them it looks like I'm super powerful, but it's not. But no, this isn't even it. This is the kind of power I'm talking about. Now, someone who is impoverished could also be operating this kind of power. And even then, the discouragement is still the same. It's on the same level. It doesn't matter because really, okay, the human standards of, say, wealth and power compared to poverty, and then if we compare those two things to God's level of power and authority, they're both impoverished. It doesn't make a difference. So today I need to encourage you, whoever you are, to make sure that you recognize intentionally recognize that God is operating crazy power through you right now, wherever you are. And of course, this is after you're actually being obedient to God. You're moving forward in His steps. You are doing exactly what He says, and you don't realize that you're operating some kind of power that He is actually using in your life. One of the symptoms that you are dealing with this is after you finish a project with God, or you finish some kind of mission, or you finish a step, you are very discouraged because you think that this step is not, you didn't do a good job at it. Maybe you've recorded a song and you haven't heard it yet, and you're super depressed because you're afraid to even look at this song and listen to it because you think, I did a horrible job. This happens a lot of times to people who are even speaking for God. You can think you're doing a horrible job and then look back and see, wow, that was the best thing I ever did. God is operating crazy power. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get rid of the discouragement that is unnecessary. You will have times of discouragement that really you can't avoid and you're going to have to work through. But this stuff is unnecessary discouragement. How crazy is it to not notice that you're operating God's power and Him prove over and over again to you that you're operating His power, but every time you forget because you're looking at your natural situation and trying to compare it, and it discourages you. How you need to think is, I don't care what situation I'm in the natural. I can't compare what God's doing in my life right now, the power that I'm working in, to even what I'm seeing with my natural eye. And it's God's job to make sure that actually that it matches when He's ready. So this is one of God's hospital situations where He will put you in to make sure you're actually not relying on natural things. You're actually relying on God's wisdom and faith. You're relying on, I know I'm operating God's power, and that's all that matters. Nothing else matters. Once you get this down, then you can actually move out into your purpose, and it really won't matter what happens in it won't matter the natural situation. They'll come up, they'll come down, you'll be in all different kinds of situations, and you will always look at, I know I'm operating God's power, so really nothing matters. That's going to get fixed. Whenever God wants to work on that, it'll be done. I'm not worried about this situation. I'm not worried about these people. This is how you get to that place. Now, I used wealth and poverty as example, but really this comes in even relationships. This comes with people. Why are people always worried about haters? That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Worried about a hater. And we shout about this all day. But shouting about stuff like that only means that you are so low on the totem pole that it's embarrassing. And I'm actually embarrassed for the church, and God is too, that we actually shout about haters. The smallest problem of all is haters. And really, I can't even call it a problem. But this is a symptom of people are only looking at natural situations. They're only comparing, oh, am I liked? Am I liked? Doesn't make a difference if I'm liked by people. I want to know if God likes me. That's really what I'm concerned about. Is God happy with me? I'd rather have God happy with me than 10,000 people being happy with me. It would be better for God to be very pleased and have 1 million people against me. Because those people, they don't matter. They're dust. God is the only thing that matters. Your faith in God and your faith in what He's doing in your life, that's it. That's all that matters. So in this situation, this is when God will send you to the hospital. And His training is making sure you're operating in supernatural power without seeing natural benefits that you think you should have. Really, that you haven't even checked in with God. You don't even realize that the natural benefits that you want are way lower and the most horrible benefits compared to what God actually has planned for you. God's mission is always to get you built up and fixed up so you can be super effective in his purpose and enjoy it. And really, this is the reason for a hospital. Him having a hospital in the palace, in his palace, is simply to get you back to all the other parts of the beautiful palace and for you to go explore and have purpose. So away with all these preachers and all these people who are speaking all the time about God's house being a big hospital and wanting to press God's people down into a box and keep them wounded, and are having them shout on messages every single week, and they're shouting about their pain, and they love that everybody in the room has that same kind of pain. If you see a pastor always having the common denominator being the pain that everybody's going through, then you could be very certain that that person wants to keep you in that kind of pain because they're not talking about higher things. When really, we should be going in as surgeons, fixing the pain as soon as possible, not shouting about it, fixing it. And then from there, speaking into the body of Christ about the rest of God's palace, the rest of God's giant purpose and his beautiful mission for our lives. This will get us not wanting to stay in the hospital. There's nothing to look forward to if we're just looking at, I need to go to the hospital on Sunday. So I hope this perspective gives you wisdom. One, to be able to discern proper leadership that God has appointed. Two, to open the sky for you so you could see, wow, there is so much to God and his palace. And it's not just a hospital where hurting people come and get fixed and they just stay and and then there's another thing they need to get fixed and they just stay in this hospital and they just lay in hospital beds in comas. And the third thing is when he does put you in the hospital, in his hospital, know that he's not going to keep you in the hospital. His goal is to get you out of the hospital as soon as possible so that you can operate in his purpose and have ultimate power with him. So we should be willing to go in the hospital and be thankful, but then we are supposed to get our lessons, get our training, get built up, get fixed up, get our spirits strong so that we can go out into the mission field and actually be God's hands, feet, and mouth. This is God's agenda. This is what he loves. This is his passion. And this is what he's going to be doing in this coming era. Not keeping everybody in the hospital. He's going to be teaching us how to be whole so we can do mighty purpose and start leading the world properly and get ready for the end times that are coming that he is actually bringing. We need to be prepared for this. He has wonders to build. He has things to erect that are so beautiful that will win souls to the kingdom. Hail Jehovah.